All right, friends, Greg Koukl here, and thank you for being part of our show today. And this is Stan to Reason, and we're going to start out today talking about one of the absolutely most frustrating things about my life as a dad. With two girls who are more or less teenagers. One's 20 now. She just graduated from teenage dumb, but she's still kind of in that pocket. The other is 17. And one of the most frustrating things for me to deal with as a dad is managing screens. And this isn't something my dad had to handle because we didn't have, we had the TV, which he called the boob tube, and there were concerns about TV back then, but we are facing screens like we've never seen before. They're everywhere. You can't go into a restaurant without seeing a screen. Even nice restaurants, there's a screen, and of course now we have the ubiquitous smartphones, and I probably have 5 books sitting around on my floor in my bookshelf, ones that have come in from different locations, talking about the dangers of screens, especially for our children. And so I have a guest today. We're going to talk about kids and screens, and we're going to learn from a person who's had a lot of experience thinking about both. He's Jonathan Morrow, and Director of Cultural Engagement and Student Discipleship at Impact 360 Institute. I'm glad to have you on board. I mean, I just know you as Mr. Impact 360, and you work with kids all the time, and you've written a number of works helping parents navigate their kids growing up in a hostile culture. And you've done some special work we want to focus on today on the screens issue. Tell us just a little bit about Impact 360, because I think these kinds of things are really critical for Christian parents to be aware of, and your contribution in this area is magnificent. So tell us about Impact 360, which is really where you spend most of your time.
Yeah, it's wonderful, Greg. Thanks so much. Always great to be on. Huge fan of Stand to Reason. And so, I get to serve with an amazing team at Impact 360. We get to disciple students and inspire and equip the next generation of disciples, high schoolers with summer camps, 9-month gap year. I do next generation research on Gen Z. We get to teach them about what does it mean to follow Jesus in this kind of world we're living in, help them understand apologetics and worldview and culture and leadership and how to grow more like Jesus. And part of that is how we disciple and think about our screens and this glowing rectangle that follows us all around all the time. And so, but we get to equip the students to go out there and make disciples who make disciples, and not just survive in this culture, but actually make a difference, be on mission, fulfilling the Great Commission. And so impact360.org will let people know how we can come alongside you as parents, grandparents, people in the church. We're outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and would love to help in any way we can. We love students and love seeing them follow Jesus for a lifetime.
Well, I'm so glad for what you're doing there in Impact 360, and you're bringing a lot of outside talent, kind of similar to the way Summit has done it, and a lot of that talent's coming from Stand to Reason. I'm glad to send our guys out there, and Brett Kunkel's been a big part of what you're doing, late of STR, not with his own enterprise, but you're in a position. Yeah, you're right. You're in a position, though, to give some constructive feedback and guidelines to parents. And I'm one of them that is so frustrated trying to manage this because I mentioned about the ubiquitous nature of these screens. They're everywhere. Yeah. I woke up this morning, I trotted out my bedroom. I took a peep at my daughter's room. The door was open, and there she was on the bed with her phone in her hand, and now she's 17. And I promise you, I tried to keep phones from my daughters for as long as I possibly could, and then the tidal wave overtook me. And it has been very, very hard to manage that whole thing. Yeah. And this is what we want to hear from you. I know you have a course that you've developed, a refresh roadmap that will explain how people can get that. It's digital, right?
Yes, it is digital.
Okay, so that's great. Very convenient. But we want to talk about some of these issues that we have to face and deal with. And 5 questions every parent must answer before giving your kids social media. Very
Yes.
important. Now, that kind of presumes that they can keep it from their kids. And maybe you can speak to this too as we're talking around this. It's been really frustrating for me because the only way that I can discipline my daughters is to take their phones away from them. You know, I guess I could ground them a little bit, but I can't do that with my girl who's in high school because her whole educational environment is built around that phone. The schools did this. Okay, so anyway, I'm just, I'm venting here a little bit of my own frustration as a parent, and I'm sure that other parents are same situation. What do we do? How young do we start to take care of this? Is it too late now? My kids being whatever. So let's just talk about the problem as a startup. Our kids, I mean, it seems like kids are getting smartphones earlier and earlier. Listen, John, when I'm at a restaurant or when I'm on an airplane, I see kids with, parents with kids in like 2-year-olds in their little seats there, and they got a screen. And I think, holy cow, what's going on here? What is going on here with kids getting things so early?
Yeah, so the statistics on this are not encouraging. 31% of 8-year-olds have a smartphone, 42% of 10-year-olds, 91% of 14-year-olds.
Oh,
and so,
my goodness.
And then I just saw a recent study with Common Sense Media where, babies 2 years old have their own iPads by a certain, and so parents, and so here's the reality. Most kids are glued to their screens, and it's making them lonely and distracted and anxious. And many parents feel overwhelmed and unsure where to start, which is why I created a Refresh Roadmap to say, okay, how do we go about building a plan? Doing nothing is not an option. We must do something. That's the first thing. And we'll unpack some of these as we go, but I want to give parents hope in this. But the second thing is we're going to have to be countercultural here. In a way, there's the tide's beginning to turn in some ways when you talk about that, but the plan and the script that's working right now in culture is not working because basically our culture does 2 things to kind of pacify kids. They give them a screen and they give them a pill. Generally speaking. Now, of course, there's a place for counseling and anxiety. That's not what we're talking about, and medication even, but they both deaden people to what's around them.
Right.
And so it distracts and it deadens, and then the worldview gets shaped. And so screens are everywhere, and they're designed to be incredibly addictive, that we know. And what's happening is a lot of times when we get busy as parents, and we didn't ask for this, and they didn't ask for this. They're the first generation that grew up with this thing, right? And so they've got screens around them all the time. And as you mentioned, schools are giving them Chromebooks and everything else. And by the way, Google's not doing that out of the kindness of their heart. They want the information. They want the IP address. Google's not in the technology business; they're in the information business. And so our kids and our attention is the product. It's an attention economy, and the first thing to do as mom and dad is recognize that we have to figure out and first resolve, is this going to be different in our home? And then we can start to look at a plan, because the reality is when it comes to technology, you've got culture is what you come to see as normal without having to think about it. And there's a culture around our devices, and there's a normal. And so they all have these phones, and it's addictive. We know that. It operates on the same neural pathways as gambling, cocaine addiction. There's Harvard studies on this. The algorithm activates the same dopamine release, the habit loop, the cycle. And if you aim that at any 13-year-old or 12-year-old, they don't have a chance. We hardly have a chance as adults. They definitely don't have a chance. Yeah. And so there's some things I can talk about, but they're pervasive. And so every parent, what happened, Greg, was honestly this, because I get to work with a lot of students year round in Impact 360, and that's an amazing blessing. And we talk about these things. We try to help them in this. But I kept running into parents at different conferences or different training events, and they're like, I don't know what happened to my kid. Basically, they still go to youth group, they still do these things, but they got a phone their freshman year or sophomore year, and it's like not even the same kid anymore. And what happened?
Right.
And so that
By the way, that's an experience that I had in my own family, and not with both of my daughters, but I don't want to get in much detail, but I see personally the impact there and how it just shifted everything, because these phones, I remember when I got my first iPhone. many years ago, okay? And I thought, man, this isn't a phone, this is a magic wand, because it was amazing all the things that it could do.
Yeah.
And I never got sucked in to it being kind of a, I don't know what, and I don't want to use the idol, though that might be an appropriate word.
Yeah.
But I sucked into being addicted to it. To me, it's a tool, and I use it as a tool. And when it's not functioning as a tool for me, I'm on to other things. But I grew up learning how to do something with my mind when I was just sitting there doing nothing else.
Yeah,
Or
boredom.
reading a book or doing something, managing this. And
Yep.
part of my concern is kids are not learning how to do stuff with their minds. They are learning that they have to be spectators every single second of their waking life. This is part of my concern here.
Yeah, and so there's a term for that today. The scrolling is called brain rot, and so you just kind of have this idea of kind of
appropriate.
eventually it makes us all dumber. I mean, it really does, and it removes our ability to focus, have sustained thought. There's more and more studies coming out on this where even if you read the book digitally versus you read a physical hard copy of a book, it activates different centers of the brain. So again, even the same content is doing different things. And so the first thing that we have to recognize is that we need to attack this differently, and we can't. And parents have to go first in a way, because there's a couple of things lurking in the
Before you go
background.
through it, let me just a clarification, because this is the second time you use the word differently, and I want to know differently from what. We have
Yes.
to attack this differently from the way the world's approaching it. I'm not sure what you mean there, so help us
Yeah,
out.
great question. Great use of the Columbo question there. I love it. So yeah, it's the master, the grand master of all that. And so when it comes to using it differently, our culture's script is simply this. At best, most kids will get a phone by the time they're in 6th grade in most families, a smartphone. And they'll get it with no parameters. They'll get it with no parental controls. A lot of times as parents, we either don't know the technology, or we just get busy, or we have good intentions, and we hand it over. Sometimes we'll check the box that they're 13, because at least by law, you're supposed to be 13 before you get on social media like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. And so what parents will do is they'll actually check the box and actually lie, which is not the best thing. So that's not a great example. And by the way, that number at 13 is a completely arbitrary number. It was going to be 16 in Congress, but then they pushed it back to 13 for there's no independent research on that. It's actually worse for them. And so what happens, the normal script is they get a phone, and that's part of a rite of passage. You know, we're in a culture that doesn't have a lot of rite of passages anymore, except getting your phone. So you get a phone now, and then you have access to. Yeah, and even then, but then some teenagers are getting driver's license less and less these days. And in terms of they're putting that off. And so one of the things that I want to say differently is uncritical acceptance and doing what everybody else does. That's the normal script. Gotcha. And so at a certain age, like by the time they get in high school, they're all on social media and everything else. And so as Christians, so what we know, and Jonathan Haidt and others have done great research on this. He's an evolutionary psychologist. He's done some things. He's not coming from a Christian worldview. It's just kind of a general wisdom research. And what he's discovered and demonstrated very well in his book, The Anxious Generation, is that what's happening is the screens are devastating this culture. And that's anxiety, loneliness, depression, distraction, brain rot. So we need to try to get them out of schools. So that's the big move thing right now. But as Christian parents, here's what we need to think about. And honestly, as any parent, we know that there is a strong correlation between screen time and social media and increased depression, anxiety, distraction, gender confusion, all the things that go with that. Social contagion, all of those things, on a lot of eating disorders, self-harm, bullying, online predators, all that stuff. We know it's honestly it's slam dunk as far as research goes. It's pretty hard to refute. So then the question is, well, okay, if normal gets us that, then we go, well, I don't want my kid to feel left out. They're going to be the only one without this on their team, or the youth group uses this to communicate, or this is the way they have to do school. And so there's some things that we're going to have to gently push back on or do differently if we want to have a different result, right? Because part of that is like, well, we know what the current playbook is going to lead to. It's going to lead to distraction, anxiety, depression, self-harm, confusion. That's just the conveyor belt that the algorithm is serving up. And so what I'm saying by doing it differently is going, okay, this may seem a little radical to some people about how we need to apply some principles and some priorities and some things that feel different, and they will feel different initially, but more and more people are choosing different with better results, and that's what I'm encouraged by.
So in other words, there are parents that are bucking the trend, and even
Absolutely.
as discomforting as that is, what about FOMO, fear of missing out? What about school assignments? What about, all of the things that are attached to that? The I'm bored, kind of that mentality. I'm fine with having my girls be bored. Be bored for a while, and then you're going to figure out something else to do. But even in my own home, that's hard to enforce, So this is a huge issue
Yes.
that we're up against. It's refreshing to hear that there is a way to push back against it, and it is bearing fruit. By the way, when we have Hume Lake here in Southern California. When you're up at Hume Lake, you can't get a reception up there. They don't exist. So they are forced to surrender their phones for a week. And even when I've taken the phones away for a week, it is amazing to see with my own kids when they have that phone fast, so to speak, how much of a difference it makes. But it also is the case with local retreats where the church guys take the kids out and everything. They say no phones. How many of the kids cheat? Even at it's just amazing. How do we, I don't know where you want to start with the RX here. I know there are questions that you think every parent should have to deal with before they entertain this. Maybe you want to start there.
Yeah, so basically what I'd like to do is kind of give some hope. And just so if you're watching or listening to this, just refreshcourse.net will be the overview. So I don't want you to lose that, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some steps to take initially. But this on-demand course called Refresh Roadmap is going to give you a paradigm, a framework to walk through and learn in all those different areas, from learning what the problems are to what's the new normal you can create, walkthroughs on how to do the technology, where to start, what tools exist, smartphone alternatives. There's a lot in there. Smartphone contracts, ways to have a dial. All that's in the course.
Okay,
but I'm also going to give you some.
That's refreshcourse.net, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and we'll have a special code for your audience at the end we're going to give away, just because I want to make this as accessible as possible. But I want to give actionable hope right now, because here's the thing. The first thing that we have to do, I'm going to give a principle, and then I want to start with a couple of questions to ask.
Okay.
The principle is how we define freedom will really influence this, how we approach this. Here's what I mean by that, Greg. So our culture defines freedom as the ability to do whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do it, as long as you don't hurt somebody. And if as parents, if we approach our devices that way, and basically say, now, when you get older, you'll be able to do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it. But right now you're a kid, so you can't. What we're setting up a very kind of a non-virtuous cycle there. Right. So basically, that's where I want to challenge us as parents to go first and say, hey, these are things that I'm trying to, like, for example, I've got some screen time limits. I've got some things that are set up to, hey, I'm aware when I've been on X or Twitter a little amount of time, so I'm aware of those things, right? So mom and dad have passwords, and we have access to each other. There's not a right of privacy, all those kind of things. So we go first, and then we give freedom a right definition of use something the way you ought to, okay? So now I want to start with a couple of things around the questions around about smartphones and social media. But the number one question you've got to answer about a phone in general for your child is simply this. What problem are you trying to solve? What problem are you trying to solve? Is it you need to know where they're at? Is it you need to know that they can get a hold of you if they need to at a certain time at practice? Do they need to communicate with you? All right, so do they need an alarm clock? But what this device has become is it's become the utility knife, so it does everything, which means we're never apart from it.
Right.
And it's kind of like the addict who goes in, the alcoholic who goes into the bar and they get tempted. It's like, well, okay, the best way is to get away from the bar and you won't get tempted. Well, the problem is the bar is in your pocket all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
And so in some ways you've got to pull apart, because right now, you can pay with stuff with your phone. Everything is mediated through your phone, alarm clocks. So buy your kid a fancy alarm clock with nature sounds if you need to. Put the phone outside the room, plug it in at night. There's a couple things that I would enforce that would be really big. One, is screens go to sleep outside bedrooms. That would be the number one action to take as a mom or dad. So that way, honestly, they just get some sleep, and the last thing before their mind hits and brain hits the pillow, and they're thinking is not what's going on in the world or their friends leaving them out or everything else. So by and large, that one behavior will pull that activity apart, which means they also won't wake up to it. First thing. Now, that may be a battle, and it might be, but here's why I think it's worth fighting. And if we do that, we're going to give them some space. It's like what you said at Hume. Like we do the same thing at Impact 360 with our high schoolers that they give in their phones for either 1 week or 2 weeks, and they're like, thank you. And after that, they're able to have some momentum into some better habits. But if they never have separation from their device, they're never free to really kind of think and be calm. And so that one behavior, if you were going to start in one place, it would be have phones sleep outside bedrooms.
Okay, that I want to say something about that. I think it's brilliant and really critical. And part of my thinking, I mean, we've had discussions in my family about this. Wait a minute, I'm going to sleep. When I'm asleep, I'm not going to be using the phone. So what's the point of getting rid of it when I wouldn't even be using it? And my rationale wasn't, I think it's really akin to what you're talking about, it says, I want you to have a sense of separation from that device. That's in the other room. Now you are not attached. It's almost like it's surgically attached to their bodies, And I want you to have like a space of time where you realize this is not part of me. Now, in all fairness, with all transparency, I have not been as successful about that as I'd like to be, but at least was my intention. This is what I tried to enforce. So I'm with you on this. This is really critical, and I think as a very first step, with most kids, this is going to be doable.
Yeah, I think that's a very achievable first step. So you can physically locate it outside the room. You can also, if you have an Apple device or an Android device, you can set what's called a screen time. And the second critical action you have to take as a parent is you have to know the password to the screen time, and do not share it with your kids. Even when you're driving down the road and they want to log into something or what, wait, pull over, log in. Do not share the screen time password so that their phone goes to sleep at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock or whatever time, depending upon what's age appropriate or what you're trying to accomplish in your home. So it literally shuts down. Now, here's what's good, and I go through walkthroughs in this at refreshcourse.net and how to do this. You can set some emergency bypass so that mom and dad's number, and you could still text if you need to. There's ways to do that so it's locked down essentially other than emergency ability.
Right.
So there's ways to do that both physically, sleep outside the room, and set it so the phone literally, all the apps go dark. Like you can't get into it without the password until they wake up at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock the next morning.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask you personally. So I'm an old guy. I'm not a digital native. I don't even. Are you a digital native? You're kind of old enough not to be.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a digital native, so
but you're probably
I was
more
a
clever
doctor.
than I am. So I'm thinking screen time password. What the heck?
Maybe exactly.
It's in the. So tell me, how would you walk a parent through that? So they open up their, let's say an iPhone, for example.
Yeah, great. So you got an iPhone, right? So what you do is you go into the settings button, which looks like a little gear shift, okay, and then you go down. All right, so you're going to go down, and I got walkthroughs and everything in the course on this, but you basically go to the gear shift, and you'll go to screen time. You have a little search bar.
Okay, got it. Screen time.
Okay, and then literally what you do there is you can add a bedtime, and you can add it because you can build your family, add their devices to your device, and then what you can do is you can monitor. But what you can do is basically you set a bedtime for their apps. And you can set a screen time. So there's two things. There's a bedtime and a screen time limit. Both are vital. The bedtime is just the whole phone is just going to go to sleep at 9 o'clock or 9:30 or whatever you do, whatever time you set. And that's how you'd set that for that device. And there's a password, usually a 4-digit password you'll type in. And you'll do it on their phone. You'll make sure it's set up. And then it'll be tied together because they're a minor in that regard, and so 18 and under. You can also set it up for older. I do this with my older kids as well, just because it's part of our family practice.
Yeah, let me say something about that. Pardon me for jumping in, Jonathan. But
for sure.
This is teenagers do this. Okay, but I'm 18 and it's legal. And my answer is, I don't care what age you are still my, now, of course, I'm being a little severe in the way I express this right now, and I'm more gentle with my daughters, just for the record. I say, honey, it doesn't matter what age you are still my daughter, and you still live with us. That means you're under our responsibility. It's our job for us to take care of you.
Yeah.
And so the age limit, that has nothing to do with our responsibility to care for you. So my dad used to say, it's my way or the highway, it's my house, blah, blah, blah. And I guess there is a legitimacy in my mind to that concept, but we have to be careful how we say this. And that's why I was just trying to role model it more carefully for you, the way I do it with my daughters. I don't care, 18, honey, that's not the issue. The issue is we protect you. That's our job to do that. And this is a way that we do that.
And in the same way, and in the same way that we need to eat some broccoli and some vegetables and some fruit, I do and you do, and we're going to be in church together because it's good for us to be spiritually fed.
Right.
I need screen time limits and times away from my device, and so do you. So that's what we're going to do in our family. And those are the things, and we're paying for this, and there's no right to privacy. And I'm not asking you to do something that I'm not doing myself in the sense of having accountability limits, transparency. Like my wife has the password. She can get into whatever she wants whenever she wants. It's not, if they want privacy, I buy them a journal. They can write it. I'm not going to read their written journal, but a phone is not a journal. That's in 18, a legal adult has nothing to do with kind of the phone parameter. It's more of a wisdom. This is what's best for you. And that's where I think the approach, like you were mentioning, to do it that way is going to, as long as we ever do it like, well, I'm free to do whatever I want, but you got to have rules. They're going to, as soon as they can buck that, they will. So that's where we want to have hey, this is just good for us as a family. It's healthy for you. We want to take care of you, like you were saying. And that's a big part of it. Another
way of putting that, and I think this is useful. I'm not holding myself up in any sense as a paragon, but one of the points I think our children need to see is that everybody is under authority. Yeah. Everybody is under authority. Kids are under authority. Workers are under authority. Citizens are under authority. Parents are under authority. Dads and moms, and and the authority is going to be different for different people at different levels. We don't all have the same thing, except that we all are under authority, appropriate authorities to us, and that's something. I'll tell my daughter, I'm under authority. It's not the same authority as you, but my dad's gone, my mom's gone, but I still am under God's authority, and my community's authority, etc. So that's an important thing to remember. We're all under authority.
Yeah, and then we set that example. We're under authority, and then like to be really helpful. Like, so this is an iPhone. It's got different things on here. You've got downtime, which is what you would set for the phone to go to sleep on an iPhone. App limits. This is the second one. So phones outside their bed, outside their bedroom physically, and have a downtime, which is their bedtime. The second thing would be a app limits, because here's why this matters, Greg. It's so important. We have to. So most kids will have most teenagers, tweens, whatever it is. And honestly, what's so cool is, and by the way, you'd be really encouraged about this. I was just speaking at a gala for a Christian classical education, and one of them listened to your show and learned about homeschooling about 12 years ago, and then started this thing. And they're, anyway, just benefiting from your ministry, but just this idea of worldview and thinking differently about things. And so these are going to be new thoughts for people, but these are so important, because what we've got to do is this app limit. What we've got to do is it can't be an infinite environment. And so whether you have little bitties at home, actually, honestly, if your audience is listening right now and you've got young moms and dads, this is the best time when you have a toddler to create what's going to be normal in your house growing up, because then they won't know much different. Yeah. The challenge sometimes is, well, you know what? Hey, this was on me. We really didn't have a bunch of game plan, but this was new to all of us, so guilt-free zone. But we're going to try to introduce some things that are positive changes for all of us, including mom and dad, but also for you kids. But app limits is key. So, for example, let's say they have Netflix on their phone to watch on a road trip, or Disney Plus, or Hulu, or TikTok. I wouldn't have by the way, I would not. Two quick things. People say TikTok is, I think, the most toxic, addictive app on the planet. Now, Christian creators should be there, meaning wise content like Sean McDowell does. Other people put content on there to reach people who are on there. But for normal high schoolers, the last place that they need to be is on TikTok. It is brain rot. It is so toxic for them. Instagram is getting worse and worse, but it's not quite as bad as TikTok and others. But here's what I would do. I would never install TikTok. I would uninstall it right away. That would be parenting action number one. That is the Lord's will. I can confidently say that. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
But number two is, let's say Instagram. I would set a time limit under app limits for 20 minutes or 10 minutes. Now, that may sound the most extreme thing on the planet, but here's why that matters.
Wait, 10 minutes for Instagram, are you saying? TikTok's out. Take TikTok out. And then when you got Instagram, you're going to put the limit of 10 minutes, okay?
10 minutes, and here's why that matters. Because what happens is we all get on there, and we've done this. I'm sure you've done it. I've done it, where you just start scrolling and watching on YouTube or whatever, and you like 30, 45 minutes later, it's like, wow, okay, I went down the rabbit hole.
I know. I haven't never been on Instagram or TikTok personally, but I've been on YouTube.
Yeah.
You know, and I see all the thumbnails up there, and there's fishing stuff, and there's woodworking stuff, and before you know it, an hour is gone.
Exactly. Right. And so what I call the YouTube principle is go for what you're going for, watch it, and then close out of it.
Yeah.
So that's just a discipline for me and anybody. Now, but if I know I've got 10, here's why that matters. If I have 10 minutes on Instagram, and most kids and teenagers are going to be like, what? But here's why that matters. Then all of a sudden it times out, and I can't scroll anymore, and then I'm aware again. I snap back into reality a little bit.
That's exactly right.
And then there was a limit. And then there's like, okay, well, do I want to spend more time on this? And then my kids will text me, or basically ask for more time. Will be a button they'll be able to do through screen time, and then I'll be able to approve it as mom or dad on that, and I'll say, okay, yeah, 10 more minutes. But what I'll do is I'll send them a text like, oh, hey, did you find something interesting to watch? Just to engage. I'm not trying to I'm trying to ask them a question. Is like, are you purposefully trying to do this? And are you aware, is this something important right now? Because that's really the only question. Are we wasting time, or is it just, hey, I wanted to look and see what's going on for 10 minutes on sports or March Madness or fishing or whatever, who knows, weightlifting, gym exercise, girls will get on there for makeup routine, whatever it is, right? But have an app limit so that it doesn't just infinitely go and go and go and go and go. That's the part that we got to figure out. And then that's a great conversation piece.
Yeah, and the thing is that the screens are mesmerizing. Now, that word mesmerizing comes from the guy named Mesmer. And Mesmer is the guy who invented hypnotism. You get hypnotized by these screens. You get in an altered state of consciousness. It's true with TVs, and that's what my dad called the television the boob tube, because you get caught. But the minute that button is hit and the screen disappears, and I have to do that sometimes. I'm on, I'm on YouTube, and I'm looking at these different things. They all interest me, and they look so enticing. I have to hit on my mouse. I got a close button. I just hit that button, and the screen goes away. And it's almost like I come back to life, and I can move on with the rest of my life. Yeah. That's what you mean by not infinite, right? Yeah,
not infinite. You need to have some limits. All of us need that. I need to be aware of that, right? I mean, part of my job is to track culture. And so, I've got to be on X and different places to find out what's going on with different things and track YouTube and all this. Okay, but I don't need to infinitely do that.
Yes.
And kids definitely don't need it because they're still in a brain development stage till about 25 where formation is occurring in a way physiologically that's different than you and I. It's not that it doesn't affect us. It's just their ability to think, the dopamine, because what happens is how do you refresh the screen? You slide down and it comes back up, right? Like you refresh to find, basically it's the same movement on your phone as a slot machine in Vegas. And it's the same neurological pathways of addiction because you're like, ooh, what did I get? Did I win? What's my new email? What's my new notification? What did I miss? What did I miss, right?
Yeah, right.
And then it's a novelty which produces a dopamine hit. But then after the dopamine hit goes down, there's a little micro depressive state where it's like a little lull, and you're like, well, I need more, so I need to find something else, and lull, and that's why we get on that loop. And so you need app limits and you need time away from it. And then the third thing, so bedtime, app limits, third thing, and these three right here alone, if nobody did anything else. I mean, I go into much more detail on refreshcourse.net and the whole refresh roadmap. Notifications. Turn off your notifications,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then only turn back on the ones that you are essentially must have. But so many people, including so many teenagers, have Instagram notifications and all these things, and parents have email notifications, and then what happens is everybody outside of the room becomes more important than everybody inside the room.
Oh boy, that's true.
And we all do it. So again, but what happens is, but if I turn off all those notifications, and maybe there's a specific purpose for certain ones that I need to keep on, my advice is turn them all off and only turn them off one by one. You can literally go into your phone settings, same gearbox, go to notifications, and just toggle to off. And then you can go one by one of a particular app. Let's say that you need your messages to be on. Okay, well then turn on your messages app. But now you're not getting notified by every, Chick-fil-A's got a new sandwich for you. And, and Domino's has a new pizza. And did you know you need, here's 10 cents off that. Or a new thing is, hey, your friend's sister's cat just posted on Instagram, and you're like, what's going on? And you get all these notifications. But what it does is it stimulates your brain. It calls you back. And the algorithm knows this. And Greg, this is what's so crazy. It's we're in the generative AI generation, right? It's an AI revolution right now. Mm-hmm. Well, what it does is it learns you. Like, it has a forward-facing camera on here. It actually tracks when you scroll, and it knows by eye dilation and things like that what you like and what you don't like. So if you were scrolling and you see fishing in your eyes, you pause. Even if you don't like the video, it goes fishing. And it remembers, Greg, this profile hasn't been active in a while. I'm going to serve up a fishing video. Let me go see if I can get him to click on something. Yeah. Because why? It's attention economy. And if you're not paying for the product, the saying goes, you are the product. And our attention is the product. That's what they monetize with ads and everything else.
That is so scary. By the way, this notifications turning it off, I get it. It's really critical. And I don't think I have one notification thing on in my computer. That's it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm not plagued by this, but I have a totally different mindset about this. I'm older, and to me, there's a utility here for my work, and then I'm pretty much done. I don't surf the web. I don't look at this, that, and the other thing. But on the notification thing for your kids, is that password protected on their phone so that you can keep them from turning it back on again too?
So here's what you can do. Apple and Android, those are the operating systems for the main iPhone and the Android phones.
Right.
They have parental controls that will lock down and monitor a lot of things. You have to physically go in and modify notifications, but there's some third-party apps that you can add additionally. And I go into a walkthrough in some of these overviews and pros and cons of different ones. But one of them is called Screen Zen. So I'm not a Buddhist, but it's called Screen Zen. And what it does is it allows you to it does allow you to kind of password, give a time limit. You can lock certain things as well on notifications. But notifications, think of it like pruning. Like, you're always going to have to prune back notifications because you use your phone. It's part of our modern tools. Although there are better and better dumb phones, which a lot of people are using for a lot of purposes on the weekends or different things. Wise Phone is a great one. There's another one there's different ones. But the basic idea is you want to make sure that you're not just allowing notifications to creep in and take all your attention all the time. Yeah. Because that's a dopamine hit, gets you back to your phone, and then it just... They don't really care what you consume. They just care that you consume, because that's the information. That's the attention economy.
That's the drug that keeps you going.
Yeah.
This has been fantastic. I want to keep going on this, but I noticed in the material you sent me there was something about. No, I'm looking for it. I think the way it was characterized is 5 questions every parent must answer before giving your kids social media. Can we hit that now? Is that right?
Yeah, let's do it. I'll walk through these pretty quick. You tell me how fast you want to go as we go through. But here's the first question. And this one's for the parents. And this is, why are you giving them social media? Why are you giving them social media? And here, the key here is to be very clear about your goal. Is it because they've worn you down? Is it because you're giving in, you're just tired? Or is there a purpose that you are trying to do? But basically, especially if you're married and your spouse, and that's a good situation. Now, again, there's some dynamics sometimes with, parents are separated and they have to, that's a very challenging thing to navigate. But I would say, why are you giving them social media? Because what you don't want to do, are they at least 13?
Are you giving them social media for a certain reason? Here's why I start with that question. For a lot of parents, it's because the answer is this: every other parent has, and I don't want my kid to be left out. That's not a good reason. As a dad, for example, my daughter, she's 17. She doesn't have social media. We've talked about that. Social media is especially harmful for girls. General principles: I wouldn't have a smartphone before 16 or before high school, and I wouldn't do social media before 16. Those are general principles. Again, I can talk about the rationale for those, but basically, why am I giving social media? And then I can go to the second question if you want, unless you want to follow up there.
No, I have a question about this because I think this is a big feature in my own decision making about this that I faced, and probably other parents do as well. It's not what you suggested there a moment ago. It's kind of like a vehicle nowadays. We have 2 vehicles in our family, and we have 4 driver's license and 4 drivers. Okay, this is a problem, obviously, and so it turns out to be a practical necessity of the thing. It's not just FOMO, like a fear of missing out, but there's all kinds of other things that are tied in, and so it's almost like you're handicapping a child. Like with a car, you can't tell them you got to walk evereverywhere, and the same thing with this.
Yeah. So here would be my gentle pushback, or at least things to consider on that.
Okay.
The question of any technology or social media is, what problem is this solving? Is it they can't communicate with a friend? Is it they can't see what's going on? Because here's what's going on. So for example, maybe the solution is you create an account for them, but it only lives on your phone. And then maybe at the end of the day, let's say for 15 minutes, they're able to scroll through and see what a limited, and I've got some other questions that'll inform kind of how we apply this of the 5 questions.
All right.
But if I'm trying to solve connection, there's a way to do that. If I'm trying to solve communication, there's a way to do that. So if they just need to talk to me, then I can get them what's called a Wise phone. I can get them a Gab phone. I can get them a couple different tools that can call and message me, but they don't have the App Store. They don't have social media, because I want to pull those 2 things apart. Social media is one thing. Communication as a device is another. And so if they need to be able to call me, or I need to know where they're at, I solve that one way. If they need to be a part of some other communication, then how do we solve that? And can we find a way to solve that depending on what their age is? Because that's where I'm thinking, if you're 14 or 15 as a freshman or a sophomore, there's probably going to be a way to solve that with a school or a team or something that doesn't require giving them social media yet. Now, you're going to have to be intentional about it. You may have to learn a few things, but you can definitely do it. That's why at 16, it's like, okay, maybe that's part of the training wheels. We're going to coach as we go, and my other questions may help us inform that. Yeah. But my number one thing is, what problem is social media solving for your child in that sense?
Incidentally, I just thought of another issue, and that is computers. I mean, these are kind of parallel devices, and I imagine, though they're different, some of the same principles are going to apply to social media, et cetera. And I guess there are parental controls that can be taken advantage of on computers as well, right?
Absolutely. And again, but it's a lot. You can't put a computer in your pocket. It's out in public, and so they'll have to navigate it a certain way. And so, using their computer for, say, school-related things as opposed to their phone, like it's not necessary to use a phone for school-related things. You just need access to either Google Classroom or whatever you're turning in the app or the assignment in. Yeah. There's ways. So again, does it take more work? Does it take more time? Does it take more intentionality? Is it frustrating? I remember, Greg, I've been on Christmas where I got a device for our kids, and I'm 3 hours in there putting all the installation of all the stuff back on it, and I'm like, all right, this is worth it, but it's a pain. I'm gonna, like, full disclosure, like, I don't love doing it, but it's worth fighting for the hearts and minds of our kids on this when it's such a big issue with the next generation.
Okay, what about the second question?
Yeah, the second question, and this is the conversational piece, because you want to draw your kids into a conversation around this, and it's, why do they want social media? And I would ask them, so tell me, why do you want to be on Instagram? And I would just listen over a meal, over ice cream, over coffee, whatever it is. And at the very least, you're going to have the opportunity for them to verbalize something for the very first time, which might be just, well, all my friends are on it. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm just curious, do you think that's a good reason?
Yeah.
Like, why do you want it? Do you think it's going to make your life better? Is this going to be a good thing? Tell me why. Even if you decide to give it to them at that point, or give them one, which is, I don't want to sneak ahead to my number 3, but what you've done at the very least is you're having a conversation. And as mom and dad, you said, here's why we're going to maybe give it. And then second, why are they asking for it? Like, what's their real motive? Like, is it, I want to be famous on Instagram, or I want to start a YouTube business, or or is it just, I want to keep up with everybody, or like all the things, or everybody else is on it? Honestly, I've never really thought about it, and I didn't assume I have to think about it. Don't we all get it at 13? Isn't like that? I'm American birthright. We get a phone, social media, and go. Yeah. But again, back to our earlier statistic, it's making everybody lonely, anxious, and depressed. So I know when I give a 13-year-old this device, and I don't give any parameters around it, I already know what it's going to do to them. Yeah. Unchecked, it's gonna wreck them. They're gonna get addicted. They're not gonna sleep as much, and all the things. So what I want to do is go, hey, why do you want it? Okay, and then the third question, and then you can ask follow up however you want to in a minute. But which app will you start with and why? So the third one is this: which app? Notice singular.
You mean
will you
social
start
media
with?
app?
Yes.
Is what you're referring to, right?
Yes, and why I'm starting here, Greg, is so important. Is a lot of parents sometimes, there's another, we talked about our screen time, our bedtime, our notifications. One of them is there's a way that you can turn on in your screen time settings on your device, same kind of place, that they have to ask permission before they can download a new app and install it on their phone. Definitely do that. And it's your password. Is it annoying? Yes. Are you always available? No. But definitely do it, and don't give them the password, because once they install that app, then you can, that way they're not, I can have social media. Well, I downloaded Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Snapchat, YouTube. You're like, whoa, that's like the infinite, So just start with one. Let's just say Instagram. I'm not saying that you should start with Instagram, but let's say you did. What I would do there is you start with one, and then you see how they do with it as they build up a little strength, and then you set kind of a monthly conversation. How is this going? Mm-hmm. And then number 4 is, which friends will they be allowed to follow? Now, this is important, Greg, because what I want to advocate is these two things go together. Is you need to set the profile to private, and what that means is you have to approve someone before they can follow you on Instagram and see your feed.
Okay. I need more detail there for me and probably others. You said set the profile to private. Okay.
Yes.
Now, when you say follow.
Yes.
I mean, I know about, you can have particular programs or podcasts or people that you follow, but you're talking about something else.
Yeah.
When
so
you follow others, that you get a feed, a notification feed, possibly, or something like that.
So like all your different. Yes. Well, it's everyone who has an Instagram. Let's just use Instagram to keep it real clear. Instagram is a very visual platform, and it shows pictures and with very little text underneath it. It's all about the images and the video and the reels. And so your friends will post reels. And then there's organizations like Stand to Reason or Impact 360 that you can follow. But you can follow friends or shows or other content creators or other influencers. Here's what I would advocate for a parent. I would give, if you're going to, let's say your daughter or son is 16 and you want to introduce social media and you want to introduce Instagram, give them 5 or 6 friends. I'll ask them, like, which 5 or 6 friends do you want to follow? And I want to know who they are. What you don't want to do is allow them, they get Instagram and they follow 1,000 people. You have no idea who they're following. It's like worldview nudges, and then the algorithm picks up what you like, which can serve up a lot of unhealthy stuff. Like if it knows if you're a teenage girl, it's going to throw down stuff that it knows will get teenage girls. And the same thing with teenage boys. And so follow 5 friends and then reevaluate that, because what that does is it says, okay, what is the goal of how are we going to use Instagram? If your goal truly is to keep up with some of your close friends who I know who they are, like I know who these kids are, and they come over to our house and they're welcome here, and you just want to keep up with your friends, that's an intentional use of social media. What you don't want to do is give a new teenager an account where they have an infinite environment to follow whoever they want, whenever they want, with no parameters, and you don't know any of it. And and then you have conversation. Hey, how's it going? Do you feel like this is making your life better? Is it not? Do you feel left out because maybe they went to a party you weren't invited to? How did that feel? How are you going to use it? Like, what kind of things are you going to post? So again, as long as we are trying to create a sandbox environment where it's training wheels and we can kind of walk with them in that 16, 17, 18-year-old lane.
And that sandbox has boundaries around it.
It does.
The concept there. Okay.
And that's why it's so important. And so you don't give them 5 social media apps all at once. Give them one, give them a limited number of friends, and also turn location services off. That's another one, so that people can't know where they are. Because in the same mechanism that allows your GPS to work when you go do directions everywhere, unless you turn it off on Snapchat or Instagram or any of these apps, then their friends can literally see where they are at any moment, or anybody they follow, if their account's not private, can literally see where they're at. And that's where a lot of the online predator stuff, a lot of the meetups, a lot of the crazy stuff happens too, from a protection standpoint.
So what if, as parents, we want to know where our children are at? That's a different kind of thing, right?
That's a different app. So a lot of parents will use either a Find My Phone feature as a part of the native Apple device or Android, or a lot of parents use this app called Life 360, which is basically that is a location. Like the family might be on it. Now, there's different people that have different pros and cons about whether they should or shouldn't do it, but that would allow you to, for example, if the problem you're trying to solve is you want to know that your kid got to school okay, then you can download the app Life 360. It'll give you a little notification, Joey got to school. Yeah. And you can literally track them in that way. And if that's the goal, then you don't have to do social media. That's just Life 360. So that's a parental thing.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm looking at my clock. We're really winding down quickly. 5 minutes. And it's been really fascinating, and you've been so helpful, Jonathan. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Before we get to the squeeze in the end, give the information again. And I want to get to number 5 here in a second, but
yes,
I want you to give the information carefully, clearly, and it'll also be posted on the show notes. I think Amy has already told me that. But so people can get this refresh roadmap that you have put together that will help parents navigate this issue.
Absolutely. And so Refresh Roadmap is a practical on-demand course that helps busy parents confidently navigate screen time and social media. And you can go to refreshcourse.net, or you can just Google my name, Jonathan Morrow, and Refresh Roadmap, and you'll find it. And there's going to be lessons in there. There's going to be links in there about how to have video walkthroughs, video overviews of all of these kind of things, guidelines about how to create a parent contract with your kid on social media, and it's a right, not a privilege. It walks through all those things. Elisa Childers and others have been kind enough to endorse this, our Greg Koukl and Aaron, everyone else, which is very kind. But refreshcourse.net, and for your audience, Greg, and I love Stand to Reason, I want to give a 20% off discount code, 20% off, and it's just STR. Everybody can remember STR, right? They remember that. You get 20% off the course, and you'll have lifetime access to it, and it'll give you a framework and tools and more stuff being added in there, including some live Q&As that I'll do from time to time with the group that's in there. Parents are already finding that it's a game changer for them, because a lot of times, Greg, it's just a matter of, you know what, I need somebody to give me a plan that's clear, and I kind of know what to do next. I can't do everything because we don't have enough time in the day, but I got to do something because I want to fight for the hearts and minds of my kids, and I want to come up with a plan, and I want to have a framework to do that, and that's what Refresh Roadmap does. And so there's conversation guides, there's walkthroughs, there's videos, there's all the things at refreshcourse.net.
What about the parent who thinks the horse is out of the corral? That's too late.
Yeah. So I have a video in there. It's like, what happens when you need to do a family reset? And I literally walk you through what to say. And I give you a script on how to go, hey, guys, this was on me. I didn't really pay attention to it. Maybe I should have. I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty, but moving forward, I want to be healthy, and I want us to be wise, and I want us to have a plan. So that mom and dad are going to apply this, and we're also going to apply this as a family, and we're going to do this together because relationships matter, and your mental and emotional and spiritual health matter, and we're going to go after it.
Okay, so that's all there. at the refreshcourse.net.
Yes.
The fifth question, we got like 60 seconds. How about it?
Yeah, I'll do it quick. And it's, what limits will you set on that app? What limits will you set? Because the number one thing when I talk to parents is they don't default and set a limit. They literally default it as it's unlimited. They need a limit. I don't care if it's 30 minutes, 10 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever. I mean, it doesn't need to be 50 minutes, but 50 minutes is better than no limit. And so set a limit for it to go dark per day that you have to be asked permission for, so they don't have an infinite environment and have infinite influence, because somebody's got their heart and mind, Greg, and that's what's shaping them. And their worldview's a death by 1,000 little nudges and distraction, and they got to have times where they can break free from it and the spell can be lifted. And that's kind of what we need. So refreshcourse.net.
I love the way you put that. The spell can be lifted, because that's the way it functions. When I mentioned mesmerized, you're hypnotized. It's not a metaphor. This is exactly what happens. And of course, people know this when they watch TV. If they're engrossed or on their phone, if they're engrossed in something, the sense of time passing and the outside world disappear, and you're immersed in that. Nothing wrong with that in itself, I guess, but it can be really, really bad depending what you're looking at and how much of your life it's actually consuming. So just a hat tip to you, Jonathan, for all the hard work you're doing at Impact 360. What's the reference for that if people want more information?
Impact360.org, life-changing experience to help your kids live out their faith with confidence, high school through college, gap year. We'd love to come alongside you, impact360.org for that.
And this is refreshcourse.net for all of the details of what we've been talking about here.
And the code STR, 20% off. Take advantage of that.
There you go. Thanks so much. We saw each other late last year, I guess in November, the day before my hip surgery.
Yes.
That was great spending the time with you in Atlanta.
So
Maybe
good.
we'll have a reprise of that sometime in the future. But Jonathan, thank you for all the wonderful work you're doing.
Thank you as well, Greg. I really appreciate it.
Okay, well, you're a good buddy, a stand of reason. We'll keep sending our talent there to help you out with what you're doing at Impact 360. Jonathan Morrow, Impact 360, refreshcourse.net. Okay? All right, friends, that's it for our show. Be sure to give them heaven this week, and that's what we're trying to do with our kids with this issue. Greg Koukl for Stand to Reason. Bye-bye now.